There's a lot of last minute kind of, changes that happen. And then just for myself, whenever we get requests for interviews or whether I'm going to send out requests, I'm going to do my due diligence, because I got to make sure that whoever I'm connecting with, that this is going to go, because sometimes you can see people where they trap people in interviews and stuff like that. And so you got to kind of watch out for that kind of a thing. And just, you want to make sure that it's reputable and, what the numbers are and things of that sort. So there's a lot to it.
Welcome to the Stark Reflections on Writing and Publishing podcast. There has never been a better time for writers. More information, options, and opportunities are available to you, but navigating these requires insight. Join Mark Leslie Lefebvre as he draws upon more than a quarter century of experience as a writer, a bookseller, and a trusted book industry consultant to explore and reflect on the writing and publishing landscape to help you make informed choices on your writer journey.
Hello, Reflectives, and welcome to episode 431 of the Stark Reflections podcast. This is your host, Mark Leslie Lefebvre. In today's episode, I have an interview with William J. Bruce III, writer, producer, and celebrity publicist. We talk about all of those things and more, and that's coming up later in this episode. But first, let's hear a word about this episode's sponsor. This episode is sponsored by Manuscript Report and my affiliate link to manuscriptreport.com. You can make your book impossible to ignore. Stop guessing what works. This is analytical AI-powered book marketing reports based on the content of your book with personalized marketing plans, scroll-stopping social media content, detailed target and audience analysis, comp titles and authors, and much more. There are 4 different services available. You can get a full marketing report, a social media package that helps you transform your book into high-converting ad creatives, a blog series. You get up to 10 professionally crafted blog posts based on content from your book, highlighting your book's key themes, ideas, and narratives, and even a book Bible where you can generate a detailed Bible for your fiction or nonfiction book, tracking characters, plot, concepts, and more. Now, it all starts at $25, and it's trusted by over 1,000 authors worldwide. I've been using this almost religiously for the last 6 months, and I've worked with a lot of clients who've used this, and it's helped them with their upping their marketing game and understanding where in the market their book fits. And if you want to use manuscriptreport.com, you can follow the affiliate link over at starkreflections.ca, or at checkout, you can get $5 off by using the code MARK5. That's MARK 5. These are tremendously valuable book marketing services, and they are loved by authors that have used them. Again, over 1,000 authors have used this. I'll use this quote from Julie Broad, who is the author and president of booklaunchers.com. Julie says, manuscriptreport.com does a full analysis of your book. This report is just a small fee, and look at the market analysis it gives you. I really like the comparison section to look at other books which you can use for marketing purposes, but also your own research. They're also constantly refining their output. Data-driven decisions are going to be what all the successful authors are using. And if you want to use Manuscript Report, you can check them out at manuscriptreport.com. And don't forget to save $5 by using the code MARK5 at checkout. That's MARK, the number 5. And now for comments from recent episodes. For episode 430, which was last week's episode, Rambling Reflections from a Lemons to Lemonade Road Trip. Edwin Downward said, admittedly, I've never been on a plane, but I do enjoy road trips. Assuming I have the time, I'll go as far as to pull out a map and start with the question, is there a route to this destination I have never been on before? I also love to build in time to take side trips if something catches my eye along the way, all of which makes this road trip episode resonate in a special way. Thanks for that, Edwin. It's so amazing. I'm glad you enjoyed that sort of. I just turned on and just recorded, and it didn't actually edit. I just recorded that episode and put it out there. I'm glad that resonated with you. And I like how you do that, where you just kind of pull out a map, and I love that. It's so important. The physical maps are really important as well, particularly when the GPS dies out on you and you're traveling in some areas that don't have that. But one of the things I valued about this was, like you said, a destination or a route I've never been on before. And I got a couple different ones, right? Northern Ontario route I had never traveled before, and that was, frustrating because it added a lot of hours to my day and sort of an extra day to my trip. I got to see some really cool things I had never seen before, and they were beautiful. Not the beautiful I was expecting as I was planning on going around Lake Superior on Highway 17, which was absolutely gorgeous, as stunning as driving along, Bay of Fundy and that part of the eastern Canada, as gorgeous as driving along the coast or even places along Vancouver Island on the west of Canada. I mean, Lake Superior is a significantly huge body of water that's oceanesque, and the landscape and sort of the mountainous, much smaller mountains, of course, but the mountainous landscape is truly stunning and beautiful. And so I do look forward to doing that again. But I'm glad that resonated with you, and I appreciate the comment. And I know I haven't mentioned comments from previous episodes, but I was just trying to get caught up on all the things I've missed while I was stuck traveling for longer than I planned. But I do love to hear what you're thinking about, what you're reflecting on as you're listening to the podcast. And thank you for sharing that, Edwin. Just a reminder, you can share your comments over at starkreflections.ca for any episode. It's also via youtube.com/Mark Leslie Lefebvre, where the episodes, the audio, and occasionally a video are posted there. And you can also leave comments there, or you can just message them over to me directly, because I really do value hearing your own reflections, because we're all learning and we're all picking up different things that are insightful and have meaning to us. And that is how we, as authors, continue to learn in our reflective ways. So thanks again for that, Edwin, and I do appreciate any comments that get left for the podcast. Another thing I appreciate so much are those who support this podcast over at patreon.com/Stark Reflections, as well as my coffee buddies over at buymeacoffee.com/Mark Leslie. Really appreciate the support you guys offer. I got some wonderful tidbits coming up that I've recorded specifically, some videos specifically for patrons, so they can get access to some additional content or even early content prior to interviews that are coming up, including a detailed interview and walkthrough of Manuscript Report with Florin, founder of manuscriptreport.com, as well as Donovan Schrader, who owns an independent bookstore that's very indie author friendly. Got an interview with him coming up in a while, but also did a special video where he does a tour of his amazing bookstore. Those are just some of the treats that are coming for my patrons and coffee buddies. So thank you so much. I appreciate the support you offer me. Of course, you can support the podcast just by leaving a review wherever you listen to podcasts, because reviews do significantly make a difference. Okay, I'm going to roll a bumper and do a very brief personal update. Let's see how brief I can keep this. I am way over my head. I lost a full week of work, and I was already behind in so many tasks. Maddie Dalrymple and I are updating a book, Taking the Short Tack. She's revised, got a beautiful new cover, and Maddie's done her pass through, and I've done a light pass on her updates, and I'm in the process of doing my pass through, and just updating strategies and things and techniques related to selling short fiction. And so that's something that I'm in the process of working on, along with a bunch of other books that are still on the back burner, books that I'm publishing for other authors. And wow, it's just been absolutely busy. Another thing, just to give you a bit of a heads up, is I have been beta testing the large print, the clickety-click barber trick large print option. That would anyone get that reference, the clickety-click barber trick? If you do, let me know. If you have no idea what this is, let me know too, because I'm happy to share that with you. But yeah, that clickety-click barber trick large print option with draft to digital books, and I got my very first author copies in I did A Canadian Werewolf in New York and Stowaway, the first 2 books in that series, and I also did Active Reader, one of my shorter collections, and I went with the largest trim size because they give you, I think, 4 different trim sizes or 5 you can use to make a large print. And again, if I stuck with 5.5 by 8.5 or 6 by 9, the page count's going to go from 300 to 500 pages, and that's going to cost more. And so to keep the cost of the book down, I went with the largest possible trim size, right? So it only increases the page count by whatever, but easy to do. And it's so funny because just this weekend, this last weekend on August 24th, I was at an event in Hamilton, Ontario. After I got back from my road trip, I had a day and a half to decompress and get caught up on a couple things. But I did a Authors in the Park event in Victoria Park in Hamilton, Ontario. And towards the end of the day, I had a woman come up and she was looking at the books and she was really excited. She says, "Do you have any of these in large print? Because I know my mom would love them." And I'd said, well, it's in process. And then, of course, just a couple days later, in the mail, or in the Pure later, dropped off, or FedEx or whatever it was, dropped off the old copies I had ordered to test the process. And I could have even had them with me had they come in a few days earlier and potentially sold them. But then I could have at least said, oh, they're going to be available. And so as part of the beta testing, these books will be available very shortly on all the major retailers out there. So I'm pretty excited about that, because then at least I could have said, I don't have any on me, because it's not like I'm going to have all my books in regular. I mean, I bring the trade paperbacks. I don't bring the hardcovers usually, and I'm not going to have the large print because I have enough books as it is. But at least I can say, oh yeah, you can go online and order them. All of these books are available in large print, and I really love that. So that's something that I'm excited about, because it benefits Draft to Digital. It benefits the authors who use Draft to Digital, and of course it benefits me because I get to beta test this. So I'm pretty excited about that. But again, playing catch up, I'm just in the process, because I haven't had enough driving. Liz and I are going to do a very quick overnight camping trip. I'm not even staying at the campsite because it's going to rain late overnight, like in the middle of the morning. And on Thursday, I need to head to Ottawa I'm going to help my best friend. He's purchased a condo, and he's moving, so I'm going to go help him move. So we got Friday and Saturday, we've got the rental van, and we're going to be moving all of his furniture and stuff like that. So I'm going to be doing a quick drive to Ontario's west coast for a camping trip, and then we're going to do the day, half of the afternoon and the evening, have the food over the campfire, which is amazing. Do the long hike, enjoy the water with Indy, and then enjoy the campfire, etc. And then at bedtime, I'm going to get in my car and drive the hour and a half to get back home. And Liz is going to camp in the car, sleep in the car with Indy, our dog. And then that way I'm home Wednesday, so I can get some work done in Thursday, I should say. I'm home Wednesday night, so I can be there Thursday. So I can get in the car and head out to Ottawa later in the afternoon, so I can be there early Friday morning to help Steve with all the cool things. And of course, some beer and pizza might be had while I'm helping, but because apparently I haven't had enough driving done as well, and moving too, because the house, the rental house that we just sold, that closes tomorrow, or I guess Thursday on the 28th of August. And so Liz and I also had to, on Saturday, we had to rent a van and move some of the larger pieces of furniture out of the house that were there for showcasing it to sell the house. And so it's I was just my little bit of a warm-up for getting into the moving spirit, not to mention loading the boxes of books in and out of my car on Sunday and Monday morning as well. But that's okay. It's okay. It's much shorter drives, getting to Ottawa and then back as well. And then, September I'll have, almost a full week of being at home before I travel again. And I'll probably talk about that travel and the events that are coming up later on. But one thing I should mention as well in the personal update is on August 31st, I'm going to be participating in Reedsy is doing, under their Reedsy Learning brand, they're doing a self-publish like a pro day. This is a one-day session. It's 4 sessions, and it teaches the essentials to self-publishing, and how to find your target readers, how to optimize your launch strategy, and just the process of what you need to do in order to publish a book. So I'm going to be one of the presenters. It's hosted by Reedsy, and there will be a link, of course, in the show notes at starkreflections.ca. But yeah, James Blatch, who's the author and co-founder of the Self-Publishing Show Live, one of the largest indie author conferences in the world that's held in the UK. Myself, representing Draft to Digital, a leading self-publishing platform supporting over 250,000 authors, and Ricardo Fayette, who is the Reedsy co-founder and one of the most trusted voices in book marketing. His guides have been read by over 80,000 authors. And so there's going to be 4 sessions on that. So the sessions are, self-publishing blueprint to start off, tropes, trends, and titles, matching your book to its market. And then publishing and distributing your book, which is what I'm going to be talking about, like the choices and options that are available to you, Amazon exclusivity, or do you want to publish wide? And then strategies beyond a successful book launch. And those are the 4 sessions. So going to be pretty exciting. Looking forward to that. And again, that's August 31st, 2025 from 11 a.m. until 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time or Daylight Time, and that's $100 for that session of 4 great sessions available through Reedsy Learning, and there will be a link in the show notes. But other than that, that is my personal update for this week. Let's roll the bumper and let's get into this really awesome interview with William J. Bruce III. Hey, William, welcome to the Stark Reflections podcast.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you.
So you have a background as, as a writer, as a producer, and a celebrity publicist. So among those 3 elements, or those 3 different hats you wear, which hat was the first one, and how did the other 2 come along?
Oh, that's a good question. I guess being a publicist was the first thing.
Okay.
Yeah, it was sort of a weird series of events. So I was going to school. I'm just going to back up a little bit before the publicist part.
Yeah, of course.
So I was attending school, and one day, this is at Kingston College in Niagara Falls. We were interrupted. We had to exit the building. The school is on a circle. Someone had been digging in their front lawn and they hit a gas line, and we had to evacuate the school. So when I was outside, I met a production manager. So anyways, years later, I ended up working for the producer of the original film that I had gotten involved in on that day.
Right.
But that producer also owned a company that was did publicity. So that's how that all happened.
So wait, so you're in school. So this is the Niagara College. There's a gas leak threat. You have to evacuate the building, and it's that chance encounter with a producer while you're outside.
Yeah. So it was Kingston College, and I was the only non-Asian student. Everyone else was like from China. So the production manager came over to me, asking, just basically sort of being like a between person. What do you call it when you're a go-between, right? To kind of get the students over, and so that's how that all happened. Yeah.
Oh wow! What was that? What were you taking then? What was the class?
I was actually wanting to learn how to teach English as a second language.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, that's why I was where I was.
Okay, English is a second language, and then suddenly you kind of started working for this producer, and then that's how you got into being a publicist. What was that like? What was that process of? Was it that they needed it, or something came up and you're like, hey, I'll try this out, and you had an inkling for it?
So that's a good question. So when so the production manager was Bob Wiggins, and then the film was Home Beyond the Sun. The producer for it was Byron Jones. So years later was when I walked into Byron Jones's office. I didn't know Byron Jones prior to that. I had worked on his film. I just didn't know him. Okay. And so he basically hired me as sort of like a jack of all trades, was actually what the initial thing was. And so I did the front desk, but then I was doing stuff for a company called PureFlix, which is now Great American Pure Flix. They do like films. And then I was going to say, and then the guy who was handling the publicity for the $1 Million Man, Teddy DiBiase of WWE, from what I was told, I don't know who it was, but had dropped some stuff, so stuff wasn't getting done, and so it ended up on my table. So I was like, okay, and I just ran with it, So
Wow. So now you're based out of the Toronto area, but do you do a lot of travel for productions and things like that?
a little bit, but not really.
Mhm.
So a lot of my stuff has been online. So like for instance, like I also represented Sean Harper. I've never met him. I've written for a magazine. I've never met the editor. We're
Yeah.
now in the same city, but we still have not officially met. So
Right.
a lot of that has happened. But for the films, a lot of what I've done has been more behind the scenes. Whether
Okay.
it's editing like script or whether it's just putting people in together, like producers and whatnot. So
Yeah.
more in the background. Yeah. So
Okay. And so, I mean, you've worked with a lot of, I mean, worked for or represented quite a few different folks, and that's all coming through this production company, is it, or is that, are you doing that
um,
independently?
so some is independent. So what happened is later on there was Sean Harper. I ended up signing him to my own agency. We were originally going to have him, in the same agency as Ted, but then Byron just kind of got changed his mind at the last minute. So then I asked him, hey, could I start my own agency? And so
Yeah.
that's how that happened. Yeah. So Ted was really the only one that did with Willow Creek. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. And so the name of your agency is,
Well, so the agency that I had at the time was William Bruce Agency.
okay.
It's sort of kind of folded that.
Okay.
So I'm just basically doing stuff more through me.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Alrighty. And so how does that work then as a celebrity publicist or whatever in terms of clients finding you? Is it word of mouth or what, how does that work?
There is some word of mouth, but then there's also just a lot of knocking on doors. Yeah. So
Okay. Is that you saying, "Hey, I really like your work. I'd like to represent you and get you some media, some attention, or whatever," or it's you knocking on doors or they're knocking on your door? How does that?
I've had it happen both ways, but I'm very particular, to be honest, as to who, because like there's just certain, like I look for certain things when I'm going to represent somebody, because just to avoid any problems, because today everyone's like, so many people have done things, whether it's written a book or did a film or whatever, and so if we're not cautious, we can think of ourselves better than what we are, and so I have to be walk very very cautiously, because I got to make sure that me and that person going to work, they're going to understand what I'm doing, because
Yeah.
there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes. Yeah.
So what is that? What is that typical day for? I mean, for the average person has no idea. Well, so what does a publicist do? Like, there's a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, obviously.
Yeah. So of course, like just setting up a lot of interviews. Sometimes it can be different, so sometimes you have like, like, so for instance, I Ted was very different because of the caliber of who he is, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
when Chris Benoit, when that whole incident happened where he had killed his wife, killed his kids, and killed himself, right? That was major news, not just in the wrestling world, but it basically crossed over
Yeah.
in a big way, not necessarily in a good way. And so, I mean, everybody was calling, whether it's Fox, CNN, whoever, everyone. So, at that point, then it's you know you want the attention, but you also want to be careful, because you know you don't want it to be at the expense of somebody's life, so it's like, okay, what, how do we handle this, and then I got to bring it to Ted and say, okay, what's your thoughts, because I remember at that particular time Ted at first was not interested in doing interviews, which I totally understand.
Right.
But then that changed. So there's a lot of last minute kind of changes that happen, and then just for myself, whenever we get requests for interviews, or whether I'm going to send out requests, I'm going to do my due diligence, because I got to make sure that whoever I'm, connecting with, that, this is going to go, because sometimes you can see people where they trap people in interviews and stuff like that. And so you got to kind of watch out for that kind of a thing. And just, you want to make sure that's reputable, and, what the numbers are, and things of that sort. So there's a lot to it, Yeah.
Okay. And then, so you mentioned this previously, and I want to get into this a little bit because you've done some script work, or I guess script revisionist. Is that the official title, or how does that?
That's, I guess, the official title.
Okay.
Yeah. So when I was first started with Byron, because so to be completely, I didn't know any of this world,
Right.
prior to this. When that gas line thing happened, that was a huge blessing. But it was like you're thrown into a world that I had there was no plan to. I mean, it's always a dream, but it was never like so. Um, Sorry, what was your question? I got off
Well, it
track
was
there for a
about
second.
script revisionist because I mean, you worked on an
Right.
Eric Roberts film, right? Is that right?
Right.
Yeah.
So Byron, he started to send me scripts. Basically, he wanted to help kind of school me and everything. So I would go over scripts. And at first, it was just sort of understanding how a script kind of reads versus, a
Yeah.
typical book or a poem or song or whatever. It's very different in that way. But then as time went by, then it was more of wanting me to comb through and look for, changes that need to be made. And that particular one that you're referencing, that one was different because it's kind of like Groundhog Day, where it's the same day over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And so you want to keep it consistent in certain ways, but then in other ways, there has to be those changes, and those changes have to be specific to that day. So, yeah.
Okay. All right. Did that come before? Because I know you've done some writing and you've got a novel in progress. Did that come before? Like, did that lead to the other writing that you've done?
That sort of kind of came in the midst because I had already been Ted's publicist. And so
Okay.
another part of that is just writing press releases and of course,
Okay.
letters to different people, right? So there was already that part in gear. And even, I should say this, I so I have the book pen holder that had come out, but before that, I had been working on a couple books. I knew I wanted to write a book, but I didn't know what it was going to be. So I was going through a few different things. I was going to do something on Harriet Tubman, because she lived in my city, like St. Catharines, for like 7 years or something like that. So I thought there's that local relevance. I had a ex-girlfriend that I was in the midst of writing a book for her. So different things like that. But yeah, so in the midst of all of that was when this happened. So you kind of you juggle a lot of stuff at the same time.
So tell me about Penholder. Now that was a memoir, right?
That was but it was a memoir about a very specific point in my life.
Okay.
I had done something very stupid, and nearly killed myself. And it was, um, for myself, like I was going through a really low point at that time.
Okay.
But at the same time, there was all of this other stuff, right? I was already Ted's publicist. I was already working for PureFlix, and there was a lot of really good stuff that was happening. And it was, yeah, so it was just me trying to, and then of course in the midst of it, now I was at the hospital. It was my fault that I ended up there, and I had to kind of work things out in my own heart because, like, I believe in God, and I looked at it from the perspective of, I really made a big boo boo, and it was trying to rectify. Like, okay, I knew that God could heal, and I knew that He could forgive, but putting those two things together was just something I'm like, it's a whole nother thing when you're in a surgical gown in the hospital and they're telling you need surgery or you could die. It really puts into
Yeah.
perspective. Yeah.
Do you think that that's a book that someone else is going to read and they may be at a low point, and that may help them, it may help inspire them, because obviously you've made it through that, right?
Yeah, that was the hope with the book, because I knew what I was wrestling with,
Yeah.
and so I was just thinking, okay, what if someone else is dealing with the same situation? Because it happened so quick,
Yeah.
this wasn't like a progression. It was something, I made one stupid mistake that took like 30 seconds near the end of my life, so, and I remember at the time, because they had brought in an emergency surgeon and they were going to do surgery that night. And I felt like I couldn't take the surgery, to be honest.
Right.
And so I told them, like, I made a rash decision and that got me into this spot here. I
Right.
don't want to make another one right now and regret it. So I asked them, can I make it through the night? And they told me, you can. There may be more damage, but you can. And so, yeah, long story short, I never did have the surgery, and I'm
Oh,
alive
wow.
today. But yeah, but it was a real wrestling. I tell you, like, it was a real big wrestling for me. Yeah.
So, is it okay if I ask? I mean, you said you made a mistake, something happened, it involved the hospital and surgery. That sounds pretty significant.
Yeah, yeah. I won't say what it was, because it was like, So I think, put it this way: if I had succeeded, and I'll say this, I didn't intend on killing myself today. And I intended to hurt myself. But had I died, I'm pretty sure I would have made that show, A Thousand Ways to Die, or whatever. I
Right.
think I
Oh,
would have
okay.
ended up on there as a highlight reel. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So it was kind of like something that you did that in retrospect, you're like, whoa, what was I thinking, or whatever, right? So,
Absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely.
and I'm sure. I mean, especially, I mean, having grown up in the 80s myself, we did lots of things that I can't believe I made it. Can't believe we're
Right.
here. So,
You're right. Exactly.
I mean, the
Exactly.
seatbelts weren't mandatory when I was a kid too, so that's
Yeah.
all right.
Thank you
So,
for your understanding.
no, no,
Because
no.
it's always like, it's
Yeah,
always like this cringe, like, as I go to share it, because I'm like, I want to inspire people, but at the same time, I really don't like put myself out there.
yeah, yeah.
It really is the most embarrassing moment of my life.
So how did you get over that? Because I mean, it is difficult to share, and you're kind of opening the kimono, you're exposing yourself in a really profoundly intimate way. How did you get over that? I mean, that takes a lot of courage. How did you get over that fear? Because you did write it into a book.
I think the biggest thing was recognizing, that God really came through, because I really, like, if there was ever a time in my life, I've had my share of times that I should have died, but that one most specifically was like, man, I really blew it,
Yeah.
and so I had that, and then writing the book, to a certain extent, there was a sort of a therapeutic side of it,
Right.
um, and I think being able to write it, almost it almost gave it purpose, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, Scott Stapp did a song called "Purpose in This Pain," and and I would say, yeah, it's the same thing. Like, it's just like, if I got to go through it, there's got to be some light at the end of the tunnel, and so
Right.
that light is being able to just share it. Yeah.
And it almost sounds, based on what you were saying, reminds me of a different song from Rush that Neil Peart wrote called, and the lyrics go, "Working them angels overtime." It seems to be a practice that
Yeah.
we play
Yeah,
there.
you're working overtime, that's for sure.
The guardian angels working overtime. All right, so
Yeah.
you are now, you, as I understand it, you're in the process of working on a book. Is it complete yet? And
In the
like a
process, yeah,
novel?
in the process.
Yeah.
It's a novel. Yeah, a thriller
Okay.
novel. Yeah.
So the tentative title is Hate. Can you talk a little bit about this novel that you're working on?
Yeah. So it, it was a couple of events that happened. So there was like Chris Cornell had died, Chester Bennington had died, and then Dolores O'Riordan had died, and it was all in the course of, like, I don't know, 6 or 7 months, right? And I
Right.
remember when that happened, especially when Dolores, because she was the last of that chain, and I
Yeah.
remember just
Yeah.
like, it really upset me, because what had happened is I would hear people, like, that I'm friends with or whatever, and I hear people's comments about celebrities, right? And how it can, that, I don't know, it just feels heartless at times towards celebrities, because they have everything and whatnot. But the thing is,
Yeah.
we like people have things, materially, and they have the fame and all that, but still struggle with the same emotions that we all struggle with, right? And I feel like at times it can be a lot more of a lonelier road for them, because it's
Right.
like, where do you go when you have stuff? So there was that aspect of it. So when I was writing this book, it was sort of me, I think, trying to come to terms with that, because I thought, okay, what if it was somebody that I represented? What if it was somebody that I'm friends with?
Yeah.
How does that work? So the novel is sort of like, there's kind of like a mystery behind the person who dies, and then it's, of course, there's that thriller aspect of it, trying to figure out what happened, and culminating to that event, so yeah, there's that.
What do you think? I mean, because you represent celebrities and people who are in the public eye, um, why do you think it is that people sort of take a cold hearted approach when something terrible happens to somebody who happens to be famous, and why people seem more willing to go, good, serves them right, as opposed to if that happened to somebody that they knew or someone down the street, they would probably be very empathetic and caring. Like, what do you think causes that?
I think it really is that disconnect, right? So if we look back at the Cranberries, right? What's that song they did? Um,
Zombie?
Zombies, right? For the very same purpose, because it's like, okay, if it was happening to our nation where we're being bombed, right? Now the shit matters, right? But if it's happening in some other world, somewhere in a third world country or whatever, we're so disconnected that it's like, you can almost watch it like it's television, and it's like, no, you're watching people die,
Yeah.
and so I think it's the same idea, is because we're seeing that on TV, and then we're seeing celebrities on TV, and so we're not seeing the connection, where I think even if we had taken a trip, right? Let's say I went over to Russia or to the Ukraine right now. If I had gone there 3 years ago, what's going on right now would hit me a whole lot harder, right?
Right. Yeah.
Versus like, okay, you hear about it, it's like, okay, whatever, and you just kind of go on with your day. So I think it's the same thing with celebrities, because we don't know them, and especially we see, I think, the exuberant life that they have, and like, and think, okay, well, they have everything, I don't, and and we can be jealous but not realize that what we're jealous of we really don't know, so
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess maybe, like you said, we see them on these screens. They're not real. They're
yeah,
larger than life, so they're not real, maybe in some
exactly.
ways.
I think it's like, I remember when 9/11 happened, and I was attending school at the time, and I was actually in New York State. I was supposed to be in New York City that day, but we all piled into one of the lounges, and we're watching, the reruns, right? And when
Yeah.
you're watching it, it almost feels not real. You feel like you're watching a movie, and meanwhile, you're watching, like, almost in real time, a tower getting hit and go down, right? But because we've seen it in so many movies, we just become really like, okay, it's just another program, and
Yeah.
it takes a bit for it to kind of sink in, like, whoa, this is real,
Yeah, and
this is real.
there are thousands of people inside that building that's coming down
Exactly.
that are
Yeah.
trapped, that couldn't get out. There were, rescuers who went up to try to save people. Yeah, that
Exactly.
is true. It is a difficult thing. So I love that you've applied that element to the novel you're working on. So is that something that's coming out relatively soon, or is it just something you've just started?
Um, the hope is for it to be next year. It's I don't know. I had to recently. I kind of had to put it on hold, for a couple reasons. One is just some other life events,
Yeah.
but then two, to be honest, there's like, I feel like I don't know how this is going to relay to the reader. I'm hoping it relays, as how it's come out, but I felt like I had to kind of put myself into a dark spot to write certain things,
Yeah.
and so, and I mean, it's good in one sense. I think that'll help to connect to the reader, but it was hard kind of going in, and almost harder coming out, if that makes sense. Like, I've heard about actors, they do like method acting, where they kind of, they go back to a spot in their childhood where they're like, they're beat up or whatever. I didn't have that, but you know what I mean? Like, they go to some spot in their childhood to try and pull out that character,
Yeah.
right? And so I thought, okay, I'm going to try this as a writer, and just, you know, and the thing is I felt like, I remember there was this sketch thing with Eminem. I forget who he was in an interview, but he was joking around about how, like, you make your life sound so much worse than it is, right? And that's what I basically had to do, because I don't really have like a, you know, there's a moment in my life that there was a bad situation that had taken place where, okay, yeah, if people knew about it, it'd be on the news for sure, but it's not like, you know, like there's certain places where certain people's stories, I'm like, man, that's rough, you know.
Yeah.
So I had to really saturate myself in that moment to pull out, you know, those emotions. And it's something where I'm like, okay, I don't know if I want to do that again.
Of course,
To be
yeah.
honest. Yeah.
You'll willingly dive into that. So, the first book that you wrote, Penholder, how was that published? Did you go and find a publisher? Was that something that you took the reins yourself? How did that come about?
So that's just through a very small publishing company. I was originally going to go through what do they call it? It's one of these companies that where you pay money. You know, I was originally going to do that. That's actually how I met my wife.
Okay. Oh, really?
So I actually bought the package from her, but then after we got in a relationship and after she left the company, then I got a refund and I went with a small publisher. So,
oh, wow. So this was a company that does the services for you. They put the book together, they edit it, put a cover on it, publish it.
No. So the cover was done through a company called Symmetric Productions. They're out of St. Catharines. They were
What's
actually
the name of the company?
Symmetric Productions.
Metric. Oh, and they're a design company.
Yeah, they do websites and they do DVD covers for some of the films. So, and they were actually in the same office as us. So I actually did some, like, remember I got hired as a jack of all trades. So
Yeah.
I used to. So there was Symmetric Productions, Pureflix Entertainment, and Willow Creek Marketing, and then there was a missions company. All of them were in the same thing. So when I would pick up the phone, I'd be like, I don't know which order it was, but I had to say all four of those companies.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So it was a huge mouthpiece or whatever.
There's like a lawyer office with 5 partners or something. You have to mention everyone's name.
Right. Yeah. It was pretty much like our office. We had a nice office. We had a sweet office, but yeah, it was pretty much like that. Yeah.
Okay. But then you did find a publisher after that. You got your refund from that package. And
I got my refund. Yeah. And then Queensbridge put it out.
And you got the girl. You got the girl. You got the
girl. So
okay. There you go. Come on, you buried the lead. You met your wife through this contact. That's amazing.
Yeah.
See, there's an amazing story right there. Cool. So, I mean, does that mean she works in the book industry?
She was at that time. She was working for a company. It's called Ex Libris, which was like a partner of Random House. So Random House had bought it at the time. So yeah, that's how we met. But she works now for Service Ontario, actually.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Helping me with my driver's license, my health card.
That's right.
All the services that we need. All right. Yeah. And then you said, so what publisher did you end up going with on that one? And I'm curious, how did you find them?
It's a company called Queensbridge. Yeah, they're just local.
A local, like Toronto area or St. Catharines publisher?
Yeah,
okay. Oh, cool. Is that what you're thinking of doing with the next book? Is that like you have a relationship with this publisher, so when that's ready, you're gonna knock on their door?
I thought about it. I'm either gonna go just like self-publish, or I'm gonna hope for, fingers crossed, for like a New York contract,
There you go. All right.
But I know I'm still
if
kind of.
Only you knew a publicist who could help you.
Yeah. Oh man, if I just knew. Yeah, and that's the thing too, because I was thinking, you know what, like, I could do that side of things, So we'll see. We'll see what happens. I mean, there's always that hope, and there was a show I used to listen to, as a podcast. It was called actually, I don't want to say the name because there's somebody who's doing it now, but it was through a guy named Mark Jeffrey, who's an author. He used to interview people, and he had a really good podcast. Mark, so there's you, Mark, and then there's Mark Jeffrey. So Mark Jeffrey, if you are seeing this or hearing this, yeah, I listened to
Mark
your
Jeffrey and Mark Leslie, they have very similar sounding.
very similar. So I had to specify
two first names. Yeah.
Yeah, but he was the first podcast that I had listened to, and I used to listen to it like over and over and over because there was only, I think there was like 20 episodes. But I remember in one they were talking about like going through like the acknowledgments from an author, because there you can find the person's agent, and then you can, so if you're looking to find an agent in a specific genre to go about that route. So I was like, okay, you know what? Maybe I'll go and do that, and find an agent myself. Because everything I've done, I've never had an agent. I've always been the agent. I've always been the agent or the publicist, right? And so, and it's exhausting. I'd rather have someone else do that for me. Like the publicist, no, that'll always be me because, got my Rolodex, so we'll go with that.
Awesome. Well, is there anything, so because you've gone through this experience in publicity and in production, in writing as well, any advice you would give to someone who would want to get into any of those pursuits?
You know what, like for myself, I found it to be a blessing, the road that I took, because I didn't start with something. I mean, I was so it was a film, right? And it was directed by an Academy Award winner. But my role was, as a production assistant, so I felt like the road that I ended up taking, not by choice, but I felt like it helped, because I'm seeing things, a lot of stuff behind the scenes, at first. So I'm able to kind of learn before my face kind of gets out there, if that makes sense. Versus if I put myself out there too quick. That was my experience. Now I wish I could have gone and, if I had known these events would have happened, I probably would have, changed my minor, changed my major in school, because, look at what would kind of work best. But I would definitely say also too, go for it. That'd be probably the biggest thing I would say, as to recommend people, is just to go for it, because there is so much discouragement out there. Like anytime I go to do something new, doesn't matter what I've done, there's the negative voice is so loud. And so it's like, and that'll always be there. I feel like no matter what, and I'm sure you can say the same thing, like, whether it's a new book you're doing, a new podcast, whatever you're doing, right? There's always like, the people are so negative. And so it's like, just go for it. I mean, run it by people that you trust, you know what I mean? Because people are, there's good people that we have in our life. But you got to keep that negative stuff out. Oh, and I would also say, listen to Mark Leslie's podcast.
Well, I was going to say, you ended on a really positive thing, and then you just threw another one in there. Thank you. William, where can people find out more about you online?
So they can go to my website, William, middle initial J, Bruce the third being in Roman, Roman characters. So William J. Bruce III.com.
Awesome. So, I Captain. I thank you so much for hanging out with me today.
Mark, thank you. It's been an awesome blessing just to be on your show, and I got a great deal of respect for you. I like your questions, both today, and I've listened to a couple other episodes before. I'm like, okay, this guy's good. So
thanks.
Thank you, Mark.
A few reflections on this interview with William. The first is when William talks about that negative voice that speaks so loudly, particularly when you're trying something new or you're about to try something new. William's advice is to just give it a try. You never know. And that's the thing. That's related to, writing and the things that we do in the writing life. We get so scared. We get so nervous getting that first book published, sending that first story out to an editor can be nerve-wracking. That self-doubt steps up. It's like that voice when we're writing, that editorial voice that keeps wanting to fix and edit the thing rather than to move on. Because it's a huge thing, right? When you stick your neck out, when you put something out there. It's a terrifying thing. I still remember, I go back to an interview I did with Julie Cherneda when she had published her very first novel, a science fiction novel. And in her previous life, prior to becoming a full-time fiction writer, Julie had written biology textbooks. And in the interview I did with her about what it was like, she said, it's different when you're doing the writing, the technical writing, etc. But when it's fiction, when it's something that's yours, she said it's kind of like standing naked on the front lawn. All your neighbors, everyone can see. And that is the feeling, that's the fear. But again, is what can we do to alleviate the fear? Other than potentially one bit of advice I've seen recently is the reality. So when you see a recording of yourself or hear a recording of yourself, you're very self-conscious. Obviously, when you hear a recording of yourself, it sounds different because you're hearing your own voice through the bone conduction in your head that gets to your ears, as opposed to the way it actually sounds. So it doesn't sound like you, because that's not me. That's not what I sound like. It's very similar. It's a different sort of feeling, but there's a group shot, and there's 5 of you in the shot, and you feel like this is not your best. I was, I had a weird look on my face, or I, partially blinking, or something like that. We're so self-critical of the little things about ourselves, but we wouldn't even notice if the person beside us had a similar issue, right? We're all squinting because, we were facing the sun when this picture was being taken, that kind of thing. You're gonna be critical about your squinting, for example, in the photo, but not the person beside you. We over analyze and are harder on ourselves than we are on other people. And that's kind of the reality, and that's one of the reasons why we give self-doubt such power over us. And interestingly enough, my second reflection, I talked about how we're we're meaner to ourselves than we are to others when we judge them in certain cases. So let me get to the second reflection here. So William talked a bit about, working with celebrities and how people can be heartless about celebrities, right? Because they're distant, they're different than us, they're away from us. Therefore, we can mock them, or we can criticize them, and we can judge them. We can speak meanly about them because they're not real people. But when people are mean about celebrities, the way they speak about them without really knowing the internal, intimate view of them as people, the actual people behind the persona that is projected or portrayed by media, by other people, etc. And I think it's interesting because that very same thing that we do with celebrities goes for the way that we treat the other in society. We hate people of a certain class or race or geography or lifestyle or sexual orientation, or whatever, without ever really considering them as a complex person with feelings, with motivations, with loves, with fears, etc. Most people, in general, are good and decent and kind and caring and compassionate and loving. Even those who seem to be angry all the time or always seem to espouse hate, they actually have feelings and motivations and fears, just like you do. Now, it's likely because we can't see or understand what it is that's actually troubling them, why it is that they feel so strongly in a negative way about someone else because of something about them that they don't really understand. Perhaps it's because they don't yet have a perspective that is able to help them to understand. That's why patience, yes, extreme patience in some cases, and compassion, extreme compassion, are so important. Do we take the time to understand the people that are different than us instead of judging and being harsh? Just like I said, instead of being harsh on yourself, cutting some slack to some of those people who are different than us and trying to understand why it is that you see the world in a different way than they see the world. Now let's direct that to your writing. So you have a bad guy. And to make the villain, or to make the bad guy in your story, your novel, whatever, truly compelling and truly authentic and real, you don't want a cardboard villain that is just pure evil. I mean, no bad guy is true evil. Yes, there are sociopaths and psychopaths who, yes, there are, there are, but most people are motivated by something that they see as good. So consider, we'll try to pick some media that people might be familiar with even if they haven't seen it, but consider Thanos in the Avengers Endgame. Right? He's the bad guy, but he's not evil when you actually look at it. So he wants to, he wants to get the stones, get them together to have the power, because he wants to wipe out half the life in the galaxy, half of life in the galaxy. And that seems evil. It's like, wow, you're killing half of everything that exists. But his motivation about wiping out half the life in the galaxy was to bring stability to the galaxy. He was trying to solve the issue of overpopulation and limited resources. Now, we see that as evil because how do you just kill half of everything, right? That just seems so evil. But when you look at his motivation, because here's the thing is, that's what happened on his home planet Titan. There was a lack of resources, there was overpopulation, and everyone suffered. And he wanted to remove suffering. He caused a different kind of suffering. But that's the complexity of a very dynamic bad guy. And that's the complexity of the world that we live in right now, too. There are people that are doing things that I can't help but see as evil. And dictatorship and fascism and Nazism. And I'm not saying that there's not some psychopathic tendencies or sociopathic tendencies or narcissistic tendencies in some of the main players involved. But I have to believe that some of the people that are somehow still supporting that somehow are able to overlook pedophilia and all of the other issues related to the players involved, they're not evil people. They're people who are so passionate or compassionate about certain issues, very, very specific focused issues, in such a way that they're completely ignoring other issues of do no harm, that could be what's motivating them as well. But again, I get frustrated and I want to, I just want to scream in my frustration that how could anyone support this? And yet I know, I have to believe that the people who continue to support this are not bad people. And that's something I struggle with on a regular basis, which is why I wanted to reflect about it. But again, how does that go back to your writing? And how does that go back to the way your characters see one another and treat one another as the villain or as the bad guy, when we know it's a lot more complex And there's a lot more moving parts in there than at first meet the eye. That's it for this reflection. That is it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you did enjoy the episode, I'd love to leave a review. Another thing you can do to support the podcast is to share this interview, this episode, with someone else that you think would find value in it, because sharing is caring, and that does really help. It'll help William, it'll help myself, because we get those perspectives, those voices to be shared out into the world. But thank you so much for listening. As always, this is Mark Leslie Lefebvre, and until next week and until next episode, here's wishing you great writing and good Stark Reflections.
Thank you for listening to the Stark Reflections podcast. You can find show notes for each episode at starkreflections.ca.
The music for this podcast, Laser Groove, was composed and produced by Kevin MacLeod. Check out more of Kevin's great music at incomptech.com.